We are talking Trojans tonight.
What's on your mind?
That's the topic of the show. Okay. So USC to me this year, they're one of the teams I kind of had the widest range of expected outcomes for in the league.
Fair, yeah.
I think they'll be good, but I don't know what to make of this team because of questions on both sides of the ball. Exactly, like I don't expect the offense to be as good as it's been the last couple seasons, and I don't expect the defense to be nearly as porous as it has been. I mean, we've seen this many times before. You make an upgrade in coaching, and it can make a terrible defense average or above average very quickly. And I'm just kind of curious about like how this transition's been going under Lynn. I've watched a lot of UCLA film. I watched a lot of Latu's film in preparation for the draft. Watched about 8 or 9 full games from this past season and a few from the season before. And I mean, like they run like a very different scheme than what you're used to at USC under Alex Grinch the past couple of seasons. And I'm just wondering exactly how the pieces have been fitting in, how the transfers that you've pulled in are faring in the offseason and the spring ball and all that.
Yeah, I want Matt. You want to hit that first because I'm writing down some notes. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, how are the pieces fitting together? Like we're gonna have to wait and see in that LSU game. But I will say this is that one thing D'Anton Lynn and the rest of this defensive staff understand: you don't impose a scheme on your personnel. You look at your personnel, what the skill sets are, what the strengths and weaknesses are, and you coach according to what you have. You cook the meal with the groceries you have. You don't just impose a framework. And Alex Grinch imposed a framework. Like he wanted that speed D, that finesse style with the various points of emphasis. And he also wanted the scheme to be complicated. Guys weren't ready for complicated. They needed it to be simpler. And Grinch wasn't willing to adjust to the level of retention, reactiveness of his personnel. So it wasn't just like the scheme wasn't right. It was the coaching style. Grinch taught to a system rather than teaching to his personnel what he had available. This defensive staff, I'm so optimistic about this staff because they are very clear about we are going to coach according to the skill sets, the learning styles of our players so that they receive information and can process it easily, simply. Like that's the main thing. And I share Tim's optimism about the defense because, as long as attrition is not a beast, if injuries are probably going to happen if there aren't too many of them. If USC can get through a season without a Bear Alexander injury or, another injury to a really important nerve center type player, this defense should be relatively good. And if it's relatively good and Miller Moss is able to deliver the goods, should be able to at least go 9-3. So, without knowing exactly how the pieces are fitting together, I think the main thing to emphasize is this staff understands you coach to your personnel instead of coaching to your system. That's really the basic building block that this defensive staff understands.
We got 12 calls online. Holy crap! I just looked up. Guys, we're getting closer and closer to this calling season. People are calling in. I got Sean calling from the Midwest, Buckeye fan, but knows a lot about college football. I would say this, like Matt said, you don't need. Lynn made it very clear he is going to coach to what he has, like the ingredients for the stew is what he's going to go with. There's no Murphy twins, there's no Jay Toya in the middle, which is the big piece I don't think that USC is kind of missing out on. Obviously there's not many Latus out there, so We don't. But what USC does have, the talent USC has on defense, that's what I don't think people are realizing. Slowly, they have been stocking that defensive end room. I know that Sean Nua just is be excited what he's going to unleash. On these the pass rush, I think for USC is going to be phenomenal. That's some issue I'm not going to be worried about. I know Matt Entz is going to have in the system his linebackers not getting lost in the trash and getting wrapped up and not be able to get out on the edge and make plays. I know that's not going to happen again this year. That's what has me so optimistic because it was a slow. They called it slow, but he corrected it. It's not a slow. It's a methodical install. He's installing what they need to know for this offense so they can attack and play downhill, right? So the players aren't worried about where they're lining up, what their assignment is, what gap they have. They are just attacking. They're football players making football plays. And USC has had the athletes for years. It's just they haven't been able to make those plays. Now they're going to be in a position to make the plays and then add to the scheme as the season goes on, so that when people are looking at the film, there's going to be new wrinkles coming in every way. The idea of every great defense is to make it look more complicated than it is. And I think that what's going to happen is you're going to have these blitzes that are going to come up. I think that the quarterback's not going to know where it's coming from. And I think really quickly, people will get to know Cam Fountain, remember that name, really soon, really early in the Big Ten.
All right. So just to complete, disclosure, I guess for those who might not know me, I'm an Iowa fan. I know that Iowa is not necessarily a blue blood like USC, but I'm just calling because I wanted to give a bit of perspective since Iowa is in a similar situation, but on the other side of the ball. And Tim, you'll know that we've talked on Twitter before, and I think on Mark's show too, about if we took USC's offense and Iowa's defense, we'd have a natty, Big Ten natty. So with Iowa, we're on the opposite side of the ball. We have the problem. We're just horrible. We have been since Brian Ferentz pretty much has been OC, which is way, way too long. And luckily we got rid of him because we got a good AD in. But I guess what I'm calling to preach is that I think some patience is needed. And I understand it can be frustrating to lose a 5-star recruit because, believe me, as an Iowa fan, we don't get a lot of them. And we lost one just recently that everybody heard about on a national level. And the reasons for that are various, and I'm not, here to talk about that. But one thing that really was interesting to me was to read in the chat that someone said that development was dead. And this is kind of related to the Michigan caller that you just had, or the Michigan fan who just called in like 2 calls ago or something like that. But, Iowa does get a lot of players drafted to the NFL, even though we're not a blue blood. And the reason for that is development. Like our defensive guys, for example, who are mainly the ones who get drafted besides the tight ends.
Tight ends, yeah.
Right. But we do get some 4-stars. We've been getting more and more 4-stars, since I guess we're gaining the reputation of having a good defense. But we've only really had one 5-star who stands out, and that's AJ Epinesa, who's on the Buffalo Bills right now. The others have been either 4-stars, which that's, a portion of them, a percentage of them, but the vast majority of them have been 3-stars and 2-stars. And the same is true for our tight ends. I don't think we've really ever gotten a 5-star tight end, actually, which is shocking. But, this is time for the coaches to prove their worth that you guys just hired, as far as I see it. Because, if you don't get 5-stars, they're going to have to develop the heck out of the guys. And if your new defensive coaching staff succeeds in doing that, they're going to deserve major kudos. So I guess what I'm saying is, as hard as it is to be patient, I think we should give them a chance, see what they can do on the field. And believe me, I know it's difficult. Okay. I'm an Iowa fan who's had horrific, embarrassing, abysmal offenses for the last multiple years. And anyone who's listened to the national show will know that I have been complaining about it for over 3 years.
Yep.
And I know it sounds weird that I'm preaching patience, but we just hired a new OC as well. And I'm waiting to see what he does. I guess my point is don't despair, but you can see what happens.
No, I think most SC fans saw what Dan Lynn did last year. And if Lynn could do just let's face it, he had a top 10 defense. If he could do a semblance of that, right? So, and what Matt said about he's going to mold it to the roster, it's not like USC doesn't have athletes. Everyone's so fixated on the fact they didn't get depth in the middle line. Heck, I was one of them. But, Phil Parker is a perfect example of a guy who's a great defensive coordinator, preaches great sound defense, doesn't have the top name guys, but like you said, has a coaching staff that develops these guys, get them ready for the pros. It's a model that USC fans should think about. And I hope that you are as excited about your new OC as we are about Lynn.
So, Tim, you asked me last week if House of Victory has the NIL money. After the 2 decommits, do you think we have the money to compete, or do you think the high school kids from Georgia used us to get better NIL offers from the other schools, and in a sense, take advantage of, in quotes, the mecca of college football?
I think that the more and more I'm learning and hearing from a number of sources about what the NIL situation is, we could probably do a whole show on this. The difference between having a for-profit and a nonprofit, having the kids, for instance, if you are a nonprofit, you can't just hand out $150,000 for a tweet. I don't want to go to the mechanics of it. Short story is, I think we do have the money. I think we do have the donors that are willing to come to the table. From what I'm hearing is the structure of the House of Victory. This is what I'm hearing. I don't have firsthand knowledge of this. The structure of our NIL, our main NIL that the university is backing, has some things that make it more non-competitive than some other collectives. I'm going to leave it at that because for two reasons. One, I don't have first-hand knowledge, and I don't know the exact details. So
gotcha.
Yes,
all right.
yes,
Thanks,
money's
thanks
there,
for the
but
info.
how it's managed might be an issue right now. Let's bear with me to say it.
Gotcha.
All right.
Gotcha. All right, guys. Have a good one. Fight on.
Fight on, Dave. Thanks for calling in. Hope to catch you next week.